ADHD brains are wired for addiction. In fact, ADHDers that go untreated in childhood are statistically more likely to have substance abuse problems in adulthood. And the rest of us, we're still addicted to something, whether it's caffeine, food, gambling. Have you ever wondered why that is? Well, in this video, I'm exploring the root of the problem. So let's get started. All brains need dopamine to function, and ADHDers don't make enough. So they do the most reasonable thing, and they find alternative sources. Lucky for us, dopamine is everywhere. We just need excitement, novelty, danger, or challenge. Enter addiction. It's exciting, new, dangerous, and challenging. The perfect combo for an ADHD brain. Until it's not. It's important to note that addiction is not a weakness for anybody, but specifically for ADHDers, it comes down to brain chemistry. Dopamine is used for executive functions, things like impulse control, which you're going to need if you're going to try to stop doing something that you're addicted to. Your brain doesn't care where it gets its dopamine from, as long as it gets it. And because the addiction is coming from a place of need for the dopamine, the high we may get from that addictive behavior is secondary to the relief and momentary focus we may get. ADHDers act fast and think later. Pausing to make better choices is not easy for us at the best of times, and certainly not when we're already in addiction. That's not to say it's hopeless. It's just something to be aware of. And if you're in the midst of addiction right now, it's an explanation for why it's so damn hard. I mean, the medical treatment for ADHD is drugs, after all. Yes, they're prescribed. Yes, they're regulated. But no, they will not turn you into an addict. In fact, you're more likely to forget your medication than you are to become an addict when you start ADHD medication. Impulsivity and dopamine aren't the only reasons for your addiction, though. It is a way to escape, after all. Your struggles may not go away with the addiction, but it sure makes it easier to forget about them while you're high. And that high doesn't necessarily mean it comes from drugs, because you can get a high off even things like shopping. And because life is harder for ADHDers, it makes sense that we would want a way of escaping. Even the rituals that come with substance abuse or other addictive behavior, rolling a joint, pouring a glass of wine, even grabbing your credit card to make that online purchase that you definitely don't need, can become a coping mechanism. It often starts innocently enough. Socializing can be overstimulating for people with neurodivergent brains. So it makes sense for us to reach for something that's going to help us be less anxious and a little bit more outgoing. And things like alcohol have been used as a social lubricant forever. And it's great until you realize that you can't socialize without that addictive behavior. And because ADHDers are such people pleasers most of the time, we're less likely to risk upsetting our friend group that was built on that in the first place. And because we're such excellent maskers, for better or worse, these things often go completely under the radar until they are destroying our lives. And like I said, this isn't just drugs and alcohol I'm talking about. So many things can become addictive for ADHDers specifically. Things like sex, love, even risky behavior itself can become an addiction. Adrenaline junkies, classic ADHD. Things like workaholism are often a real problem because they not only feed the addiction, but there's a level of productivity that comes with it that is celebrated, especially for people who have spent the majority of their lives being told that they are lazy or unmotivated. It's like the addiction itself relieves the actual shame and the symptoms that we're struggling with. So we are suddenly our best selves when we're in full-on addiction. We often struggle with things like codependency, perfectionism, and compulsive people pleasing. And this is going to make addiction much worse, and it's going to be harder for us to ask for help. Now the good news. Once you understand what is happening inside your brain, you can work with it instead of against it. Brené Brown, one of the leading experts on shame, says that it thrives in secrecy and silence. So the moment we ask for help, our shame starts to dissipate. And once shame starts losing its power, it's much easier to manage our ADHD symptoms without relying on addictive behaviors. People can't change what they're not willing to see. So once you start noticing the patterns, you're able to course correct a little bit more effectively. That being said, quitting things cold turkey, unless it is a life and death situation, is not really recommended for ADHDers. Our brains are wired to get dopamine so that our brains can function properly. You can't have impulse control when you have no executive function. You can't have a memory of the bad things that may happen if you have no executive function. And if your brain is saying, we need to do this risky thing in order to get this dopamine, you don't really have a say in the matter. Your brain wins. So forget willpower. It doesn't even exist for neurotypicals, let alone neurodivergents. Instead, use structure and routines that support dopamine production in healthy ways. And this is going to take some time to figure out. It won't be a quick fix. Your brain is wired now for that addiction. It knows that if it needs dopamine, it knows exactly where to go to find it. So you need to add new things into your routine until you find one that you enjoy just as much, which is not going to be an easy thing to find because that's the nature of addiction. So start with relying on your family and friends. Therapy can help, but only if your therapist is really an expert on ADHD, because a therapist that doesn't understand the ADHD brain can do more harm than good. And don't rule out ADHD medications because they can be a lifesaver. Your brain needs dopamine for executive function, and these medications give you exactly that with very few serious side effects. Okay, now for some real talk. Slip-ups are going to happen. It doesn't make you a failure. They are just information. It doesn't predict the future. It just tells you where the weak spots are in your support structure. It's something to fix, not to forfeit over. ADHDers are far more likely to relapse than neurotypicals. So keep that in mind and don't give up on yourself. Our impulsivity and our memory issues make it very hard to form new habits at the best of times. And if you're fighting an addiction, you are not at your best of times. Just don't quit quitting. I can confidently tell you that it is absolutely worth it. Thanks for watching. I'm Kristen. This is Creatively Divergent. I post videos every Tuesday. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and I'll see you next week. Bye. ADHD, things like workaholism are very common amongst